In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Heartbreak Warfare and kind of the two different arrangements and versions of the song that John has performed over the years. One with the Masterbuilt Jeff Beck Stratocaster, of course with the Heartbreak Warfare kind of logo on top of the guitar, and then the Charvel custom San Dimas that John has that he performed the song with in 2019. So what we're going to do first is take a look at some sound comparisons and just overall the comparisons of the different arrangements of the song. And I want you guys to comment down below which one you prefer, although I'm pretty sure majority of you guys are going to prefer the original version of kind of how the song goes and how the song was intended to kind of sound in terms of the guitar parts. But we'll take a look at the kind of more modern version and modern take that John has with Heartbreak Warfare, and then we're going to discuss all the gear and everything afterwards. So sit back and let's listen to the two different clips of Heartbreak Warfare. So again, you guys, leave a comment down below as to which version of Heartbreak Warfare you guys prefer, because I'd just be really curious to know what percentage of my audience actually prefers the newer version to the original one. But let's talk about the gear. And in the original kind of version of Heartbreak Warfare, as I'm just calling it in this video, John essentially relied on a few different effects in order to pull off performing that song as intended. Now, there was the Rodulant Adrenaline, which had a tempo synced modulation sequence, and I'm not going to get into the details of that, but essentially that pedal was needed in order to perform the song properly with the modulation that occurred set to the specific tempo of the song. Then there also was two different delays going on at the same time. You had a dotted eighth delay, and then you also had quarter note delay as well. So you had two different delays going, and then plus John hitting the trem arm as well. So you combine all three of those, essentially two different modulations between the Rodulant Adrenaline and then the trem bar, and then two delays going on, and then you have the main kind of sound of Heartbreak Warfare. Not a lot of notes are being played, mainly kind of relying on the effects to do most of the heavy lifting. And it's a very kind of U2 style song, kind of John's closest song that kind of goes into that, the edge style of playing and kind of letting those delays and modulation kind of take over. And I really like that song, and I think for that reason, because I'm a big fan of the edge as well. But in 2019, John completely changed the way he approached the song in terms of the guitar and the effects used. Now, John used that Charvel custom San Dimas, and that comes loaded with Eddie Van Halen Wolfgang pickups in it, humbuckers. So you're getting already a guitar that's way hotter than that Jeff Beck signature Stratocaster, and then plus this guitar has a Floyd Rose. So those two changes alone are pretty huge in the overall feel of the song. But then even the way the intro starts, John comes in playing just a bunch of heavy chords, really hitting the guitar very hard, instead of the original kind of arrangement where it slowly builds and then you just hear John playing that kind of intro of Heartbreak Warfare that we all know from the record. live in 2019, it was completely changed. And in terms of the effects, we know that there was no Rodulan Adrenaline that he used. He did not have one of those. And he didn't have an abundance of delay pedals that would allow him to necessarily have delays specifically set for Heartbreak Warfare, to have 2 dual delays specifically set for that song. Because the way the Rodulan worked even, everything needed to be tempoed up specifically for that song. He had one preset back in the day on his big Bradshaw unit specifically for Heartbreak Warfare. So you could hit that one button and everything would come on specifically set for that one song. And that's kind of a lot to have done for one song that you might not play every show. And he didn't play Heartbreak Warfare every show. It was kind of, when he felt like adding it into the set list, or every few shows, it would be added in during the 2019 World Tour. Of course, too, in 2019, John's pedal board was just a traditional pedal board. He didn't have a fancy switching system or anything like that. So having a bunch of pedals on just a standard pedal board that he'd have to switch on and off, a bunch of them, and have them just designated for one song, when before they were in at least a rack unit where they're kind of out of the way and it's just, okay, one button on your big switching system unit, click that, Heartbreak Warfare is good to go. It just isn't quite the most, it's just not the best kind of system to have for performing Heartbreak Warfare in 2019. And that's also, I think, kind of why the arrangement kind of was changed. Because he talked about it even, I believe with Andy Cohen it was, where he said, it's just such a pain to perform because there's so much that goes into it in terms of effects in order to make the song be able to play. And so I think that might have been a bit of a thing where he sat down and was like, okay, I want to perform the song again, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to perform it with all the gear that's required in order to make it happen. So how about we just simplify the process? I'll come up with a different guitar, maybe like the Charvel, because he was loving the Charvel lately in the past 2 tours, especially the Jackson as well. The kind of 80s thing with the Floyd Rose is new direction John's taking some of his playing. And, I guess I just feel like wasn't written with the Charvel or the Jackson, but look, now he's kind of changed that outro solo to be with one of those guitars instead. And it's kind of the same thing with Heartbreak Warfare. Kind of changed his approach with the guitar for it, and less effects were being added. Now, I can't say for certain what effects John was using for Heartbreak Warfare. There was a theory that some of my friends and I had where, okay, we know he had the Chase Bliss Tonal Recall on his pedal board, and we thought, okay, maybe that was the pedal he was kind of using to help kind of do some of that, some of the effects, at least for Heartbreak Warfare. But then we realized that it wasn't actually the Tonal Recall that was the final Chase Bliss pedal on his pedal board. It was the Warp Final Hi-Fi, and we know he used that for In Repair's chorus. So there was no Tonal Recall on his pedal board when he was performing Heartbreak Warfare, for example, during the North American leg of the 2019 World Tour. So that theory is kind of out the window. It's really hard, too, to listen to these clips and kind of try and ping out, okay, I think it sounds like this effect on this pedal board, especially when we know what kind of each of the pedals were kind of mainly designated for on his pedal board for the 2019 World Tour. So unfortunately, this is kind of one where it's like, we can't really say for certain what he was using. Some of the performances, I don't even hear delay, to be honest. I just kind of hear John playing it, and then that Floyd Rose comes in, and that just kind of takes over because it's so much of it's a way less subtle effect when you compare it to the Jeff Beck Strat, when he's just tapping that trem arm just very lightly, and you're kind of just getting a little bit of that trem arm modulation on top of everything else that's going on. With the Charvel, it really takes over kind of the whole song. You really just hear the bar going, even though he's not totally like going like Jeff Beck or Eddie Van Halen with it necessarily, but he's hitting it enough where that's just kind of all the modulation that you hear essentially to the sound of his guitar. So I kind of am leaning towards there being no real effect that he's using besides just the guitar and the trem arm, the Floyd Rose, and that's kind of the new arrangement. And I kind of like it, to be honest. When he, like I said earlier, when he comes out and it's a bit more of a, almost like a rock and roll kind of approach to the song versus, the whole like production that was kind of the introduction sometimes with Heartbreak Warfare and how it just kind of slowly built up and you hear just everything kind of come in and then John starts playing. I don't know. It's just really cool and I'm kind of here for it. I kind of like his new arrangement for Heartbreak Warfare personally over the older one, but at the same time, I love how it's kind of like very maybe inspired by The Edge to a degree. The way he's using 2 different delays to make the sound happen and lots of modulation. I don't know. I guess it's a toss-up for me. I like them both, to be honest. I don't necessarily prefer one over the other. But I just would love to hear the song live one day, because it's one of the last songs on my list for a American concert that I haven't seen performed live yet. So hopefully one day, maybe the next North American tour, I'll get to see it if he adds it back in, especially if it's performed like this too, because it's like super easy at this point. Just bring out the Charvel and play the song. You don't need to bring a ton of pedals and effects designated specifically for this one song. But anyways, you guys, let me know again in the comments what you prefer, and if you guys want me to break down exactly how the effects work for Heartbreak Warfare, the traditional version of that, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe one day I'll grab an Adrenaline. I've borrowed one from a friend in the past, and maybe I could do that again as well and kind of show you guys how that works. But it's a very specific thing. Unless you're going to be, playing that song at home or doing whatever, it's kind of like one of those things where you don't really need all this gear set for that song. You don't need Adrenaline unless you want to specifically do that one song. But anyways, you guys, hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.